We are live.
Cool.
See you, buddy. How you been, man?
I've been good. I got a lot of positive feedback from our conversation with Michael Malice.
What was it?
Oh, just, that people really enjoyed the conversation. They liked the nature to the topics of discussion and how we all kind of bounced off each other.
Yeah, I feel like people are so multifaceted, and that sometimes when someone gets spotted in the media, it can like create like an image of what that person is, and then if people don't have an opportunity to like communicate who they are, that they just think like, oh, Ian's a crazy hippie, Jacob's a Viking, whatever. Like, right. I mean, if people don't know, you went to on the Capitol on January 6, 2001, and you were dressed up as the Viking with the face paint, and it was like one of the more iconic images from the day. Was you like there's one interview of you like screaming? I thought that was pretty wild.
Yeah, I was. I was singing my shamanic song, and that was the height of my shamanic song. And when I was in the foyer of the Senate, and there was like the picture of the cops and all the other people, I was screaming freedom.
What did you learn from that experience?
Oh, dude, I mean, I learned a lot about the legal system. I learned a lot about the court system, the notion of prosecutorial discretion. I learned a lot about the way that lawyers will tell you whatever it is that you want to hear to get a job. And that, is something we all have learned when it comes to our representation in Congress. I learned about the Mockingbird media and how they spin stories, how they lie. I also learned a lot about conservative influencers as well, because it's incredible how fast they turn on people that they don't know or understand, and how little research they're actually willing to do into a person before they start maligning them and going along with the mob.
Yeah, I think a lot about like love and fear. If you're going to like say love and fear are diametrically opposed, which love is kind of vague. The Greeks have like 8 different kinds of love, but like kind of like there's fear, there's like living in the, because like part of me is like, well, Jacob-Chansley, that's like a hot topic. But then I'm like, you know what? Communication is like the basis of what makes us human. And I've always believed, especially the last 20 years, that with communication, we can solve a lot of the problems or overcome a lot of the problems of society. And like, I'd love to see Donald Trump and Joe Biden hang out and talk about stuff, for instance. And those are just 2 people I'm bringing up, but like 2 people in society be like, oh, well, they don't get along and they don't. But like, I don't know. It's not that like everything's perfect, because like war is like a horrific concept of reality. But I mean, communication's where it's at.
Yeah. Well, and I think I don't know if I said in the conversation with Michael, but I'm of the belief that only a primitive species would even consider mutual slaughter as a solution to their problems.
Yeah, I wonder about the Neanderthals back like 12,800 years ago, and if the humans like racistly wiped them out, because they said like the history is like, well, they would steal human children. Maybe they would. I don't know. And then the humans.
Yeah, I heard about that.
That'd be pretty wild. But at the same time, like it feels like everyone's so integrated now with the earth, with the internet, and we're all humans, like human beings with the similar bodies, and like we have a really great opportunity to kind of unify. I don't know if it's going to take one language, like literally like English, for us to kind of work together to become a spacefaring civilization. But the alternative is terrifying, to think that we would fight to try, and it doesn't make any sense.
No, it's antithetical to progress and long-term success. And I don't know if per se, because you're right about, language, but the thing is that even in English, we aren't definition matching. We're not picture matching. So like if I say to you, oh, I need you to bring a hammer to the work site, but you think sledgehammer and I'm thinking carpenter hammer. You know what I'm saying? And then you bring a sledgehammer. It's like, well, no, that's not what we need. That's not what I meant at all. So think about when we talk about censorship, the deep state, when we talk about corruption, when we talk about lawfare, there's all these things. people don't, psychological warfare, psyop, a lot of these things people don't even definition match. They don't even know what the other is talking about. And so I think that's a reason for a lot of disagreement as well, because we're not actually agreeing on a definition for a term or a word. And that's causing so much, God is another great example. Your definition of God and mine may be totally different.
Yeah, it's like the word itself is just like like an angle to focus at, and like same with like left and right. People didn't used to talk about that before like 2015. I never heard. I mean, you'd hear it occasionally, like the left and the right in politics. I don't know what that means, man. I mean, I guess how do you define it?
Well, I look at it like it's just divide and conquer. The Mockingbird media has created a lot of these labels: conspiracy theorist, Republican and Democrat, conservative, liberal, left, right. It's all there to control us and create cognitive labels that get placed above people's heads. And then those cognitive labels, through them, an individual actually kind of selects themselves for compartmentalization.
Yeah, I've noticed when people put themselves in boxes unnecessarily, like I am a fill in the blank, and it's like, oh, you don't have to say that. You're just this human thing with all sorts of definitions and like one day I might be like, well, I want to conserve that concept. And the next day I'll be like, well, I want to liberally change that concept. So I both, sometimes you want to conserve ideas, sometimes you want to change ideas, and you're liberal about, the order, and you want to alter the order. I do get sad when, what do you say? When people label themselves.
Go ahead. You get sad.
Yeah, I get sad when people label themselves unnecessarily. It's I want to help shake people out of that and make them realize that they can change.
Right.
Different than what you think, whatever, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Well, we're all ghosts driving these meat-coated skeletons made from stardust, riding on a rock, floating through outer space. Like we're not really, contemplating the nature of existence on an existential and an objective platform. We're all using our social constructs to piece our reality together, and those social constructs compartmentalize us into warring tribes of different ideological belief systems and identities.
I want to bring up Operation Mockingbird because you mentioned Mockingbird media a couple times. And it's this, I think it was a CIA. Let me pull it up. Can you explain it while I'm pulling it up? Maybe.
Yeah. It's a CIA operation in the 60s and the 70s where they infiltrated the media so that they could control the narrative regarding the civil rights movement and the anti-war movement. And it has since been going full swing for quite some time. It's only been getting worse and worse and worse. So I don't call them mainstream media. I don't call them corporate media, because that's not what they are. They are CIA Operation Mockingbird media. And the thing is a lot of the time they act like mockingbirds as well. They're self-referential. They end up, quoting like the New York Times. Like, so MSNBC will quote the New York Times, or the New York Times will quote the Washington Post, or Fox News will bounce off of something that, Bloomberg said or something. And the funny thing is that when you really look into some of the sources for these articles or these news stories, a lot of the time it's an anonymous source.
I get that. I thought that was interesting. Like, you ever see that video where it shows the newscasters like repeating the tagline, and then it shows like 4 more newscasters and they all repeat it again. And then it's 16 and they all say the same thing. Like they're getting that script, and then it's fed out to the masses. And it's like, this
is very dangerous to our democracy. This is very dangerous to our democracy. Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about. And that's Mockingbird in full swing, bro.
I wonder if it's like, because it's the CIA was involved in it for here, but now I wonder if it's more global. I don't know. Because like, the division aspect of it is weird, that they would say like the left and the right. Like, I would think most Americans will be like, well, hell no, man, we're all one unit. Let's stay tight as a country and persist and be like the beacon, so the rest of the world can kind of become like this great United States and unite as well. And then I don't know if it's like an outside corporate infiltration, if it's other governments that are like, we're just tired of this American democratic republic. If it's like,
Well, I think you're right. There is a certain corporate element. I mean, a corporate and international element to it. If you look at the way, for example, Mossad and CIA work together, or MI6 and CIA work together, if you look into like Five Eyes and the countries that are involved in that, and the intelligence apparatus spying on the globe, the necessity to control the narrative in all nations is there. It is, and the whole, George Carlin said, you don't need a conspiracy when you have a confluence of mutual interests. And there is most certainly a mutual interest on behalf of less than 1% of the population to own, control, and monopolize our resources, labor, and currency. So, of course, owning and controlling the media is going to be essential for that goal to be achieved.
I know, like, I was thinking about the Queen of England. I think it was when they invented copyright. It was like I think it was the Bible. They were printing. It was after the printing press came out. They're like, whoa, we can't control who gets to see it, because it used to be they'd have scribes and only certain people would have the book. And then so the Queen was like, well, we got to make it a law that you can't just make unlimited prints of every piece of data, because she wanted to control. I would imagine still wanted some control over who saw what, which I guess maybe because they were afraid that the order would be overthrown if everyone could say whatever at all times. And maybe there's something to that. I don't know if we've ever had an opportunity to kind of like to establish a new, I mean, we're in the process of establishing a new order right now, the new world. And it's like, what is it going to be? Is it going to be like a corporatocracy? Is it going to be a technocracy? Is it going to be a libertarian republic? Somehow the order is shifting. Like, it's no longer going to be this liberal economic order, or it'll be like an evolution of the liberal economic order. But what stomping on people to make it like, to force it, doesn't feel like the right way to get what you want, what the people want out of it. I don't know. I got to have more conversations with the deep state. Like, I want to be part of it to like help them make the best order. I don't
Yeah, but the thing is, bro, is that the deep state is run and controlled by less than 1% of the population, who have created the corporatocracy, who have created this global communist oligarchy. And their intentions are quite clear at this point. Now, there are good people within the apparatus of the deep state. A lot of the time they're on the lower levels, though, and they don't really, and because of that, they're compartmentalized and they don't have the big picture. The people that have the big picture are the ones that they know they can trust not to rock the boat. I have been attempting to disseminate information because I know they're listening. They listen to everything I do. They, every social media post, every interview I give, every spaces I'm on. So I'm doing my best to, disseminate strategies so that violence can be avoided and real peace and unity can be achieved. But if the deep state rules through the iron fist, and if they must force compliance or at least coerce compliance through incentivizing what they want and de-incentivizing what they don't want, then they're not going to be interested in anything that takes away that leverage that they have over the hearts and the minds of the people. They don't want unity. They want people fighting each other so that they can control each of those groups.
I understand that methodology of like, just it gives you a little bit more of a casus belli to strengthen your grip on the system and like control it and keep the order. If there's chaos within the system, you'd be like, well, I'm the order. See, I'm the antidote to this madness. But what are your plans for making things peaceful, more peaceful, softening the iron, I suppose, and bringing people together?
Well, we have to first recognize what the battleground is. And the battleground is the hearts and the mind of the American people. And obviously, human civilization as a whole. It's about controlling our collective consciousness. That's why they fracture it and they bifurcate it into these warring tribes, because once it's unified around the idea of, say, infinite free, clean, wireless energy, or just even unified around the notion of no more war, then they no longer have their hands on the levers of power. So definition matching or picture matching, like what we were talking about before, is essential in order to win the battlefield of the mind and the heart. So that's number one. We have to kind of get on the same mental page, and language is important for that. But so is learning to communicate beyond the use of language. This is why memes are so important. Then from there, I think it's about, once we got everybody kind of calmed down, then it's about introducing ideas that everybody can agree on, like my campaign platform, for example. Everybody, Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, Green Party, Independent, they can all agree that the 4 things I'm running on need to take place in order to root out corruption in DC. So you know what I'm saying? Like we all have to agree on a unifying message where everybody, instead of arguing over these menial triggering issues that are very emotional for people, we have to get down to brass tacks and the mechanics of what makes our society either not function or function optimally.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily that everyone has to agree on everything. I don't think that'll ever really happen, but we need, I think that people should be open to debating definitions and have fun with it and enjoy, like, and if the debates are public, then the society can learn about like different perspectives on what these things can mean. And we kind of, I think the best ideas tend to overcome and propel us forward, because ultimately we want to survive. I think the whole reason for all of it is human survival. Whether you're right, whatever the methodology, like it's about preservance of the species, making things good and healthy for those around you. Tell me about your
planet. Yeah, and the planet, because without the planet, without the ecosystem, we lose everything. And that's why, like, when it comes to the environment, a lot of conservatives are rubbed the wrong way when I start talking about the very real environmental catastrophe that we're creating, not just for ourselves, but for future generations through the production of anthropogenic or forever chemicals that bioaccumulate in the ecosystem and destroy the microbiological life in the soil, the water, the air, and in our bodies, creating ecocide in the world, mass extinctions, and human disease.
These PFAS, I think they're perfluoral alcohol.
PFAS, atrazine, fluoride, chlorine, lead, barium, aluminum, mercury-based compounds, petroleum-based compounds, all of it, dude.
There's a lot of it comes out in the soil. Some of it ends up in the soil, and they were calling like the PFAS, these forever chemicals, they were calling it. And then I talked to James Tour out of Rice University, who's working on doing what's called flash joule heating. He'll take carbon, so he'll take dirt with chemicals in it. They hit it with electrical current at 7,000 degrees for like 0.1 milliseconds and turn it into graphene. And then what it does is it separates the PFAS, so you can actually remediate this stuff out of the soil. They thought it was forever, and then they just figured out, no, it's never. We're always going to be able to overcome.
Yes, well, if energy, Nikola Tesla said, if you want to understand the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. And there are bioremediating fungi. There are bioremediating microbiological organisms called archaea. And there are bioremediating plants that can consume these toxic substances and convert them into organic material. And we can use frequencies in conjunction with these microbiological life or these fungi or these plants to kind of revamp our ecosystems. But that is not profitable.
I guess if it can lay a sustainable foundation for things to be profitable, it could technically be part of the profit motive. But people would only need to understand.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell me about the frequencies that you use in conjunction with remediation.
So, like, for example, have you heard that whole thing about how when birds chirp in the morning, it actually almost like awakens the plants, the frequency of the bird? Okay. So nature is like that with everything. It's all an interconnected, interrelated whole. So if we understand the frequencies that, say, fungi need in order to grow, then when, for example, we're trying to use a bioremediating fungi to consume petroleum products like diesel fuel that has soaked a landmass, then what you can do is you can use a frequency in conjunction with those with that fungi, and then you can cause the fungi based on that frequency to grow rapidly and to consume these things in much faster amounts of time.
That's awesome. Do you have links to like scientific papers on this kind of activity? Have you come across stuff?
Well, yes and no. For example, there's a guy that used frequencies to enhance the growth of his crops. There's also people that have used frequencies or plants, frequencies and plants to destroy, like what you're talking about, to destroy, certain bad chemicals and stuff like that. And when you use them in conjunction with one another, I mean, the science is there. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Like, have you seen those videos where people plug like a metal bar into the ground and then they wrap a copper coil around it?
Yeah, I was just about to pull that up. That's what I was looking up just now. Copper for crop production.
Yes.
I want to pull up a good one about this, but he like sticks a copper rod in the ground or something. Is that what it is?
Well, it's actually a lot of the time it's like a steel rod wrapped around and a copper coil wrapped around it, and then they move the copper wire through the base of the ground to another steel rod that's on the other end of the garden with a copper coil wrapped around it, and then the copper coil is sticking up in the air, and it ends up basically amplifying the frequency of the earth and allows the plants to grow more quickly, and it also has been known to repel insects. So we don't need things like glyphosate and genetically modified organisms in order to sustain some sort of large scale agricultural project that can feed the world.
Whoa. This is so, as you were talking, I was like, if we don't need glyphosate, that means it's going to cost Bayer a bunch of money if we don't buy the glyphosate. It's such a fucking tangled mess of money.
Yes.
What's your solution to get us through this like big money bubble thing?
Well, we have the technology to set everybody free. And what I mean by that is this. What we're currently living in is a centralized system of what is called full spectrum dominance. So full spectrum dominance is a military term. And what it means is control of, number one, the minds of the population, either a group or a nation. And then from that control of the mind through psychological warfare techniques, psyops, propaganda, etc., you then end up gaining control of the land, the seas, the air and the airspace, subterranean, deep underground military bases, extraterrestrial, space and satellites, chemical and biological agents, technology, computers, phones, cell phone towers, radio, television, the agricultural apparatus, the medical system, the currency, etc. And this gives the individuals that control all of these apparatuses full spectrum dominance. And what we have now through international entities like BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, through international entities like the United Nations, the WHO, the CDC, the IMF, the World Bank, the Bank of International Settlements, what we have is a full spectrum dominant system that is controlled by less than 1% of the population. So they're profiting off of us just living day to day. They're monopolizing all of our resources, all of our labor, and all of our currency. So the solution then is not to try to use our energy to fight this system, because you're always going to lose. They have full spectrum dominance. What we want to do is create a new system that renders the old system obsolete, kind of like creating an automobile rendering the horse and buggy industry obsolete. So through things like 0-point energy engines, which that was just declassified by Donald Trump in 2020, through things like Tesla tower technology, which was discovered over 100 years ago, that can give us infinite free, clean wireless electricity, through things like, say, the TR-3B, which is a triangular anti-gravity or inertia propulsion craft that Donald Trump declassified as well in 2020, through things like Dr. Rife's machine, that's RIFE, Royal Raymond Rife, and the use of frequencies to not just improve human health, but destroy disease. and through things like a precious metal-backed currency, cryptocurrency, and a barter system, we can actually render this whole system of full spectrum dominance obsolete and create a decentralized system where the power is literally back in the hands of the people, because it is not being channeled through the technologies or through the apparatus of less than 1% of the population.
How do you instantiate unity in a situation like that? I think the fear of the people that are controlling the spectrum is that if it does become decentralized and each individual has like full control of their own environment, that it'll become like warring tribes.
Well, a lot of the time, if you look at history, most wars are fought over resources and territory. So if we make resources infinite, then war becomes obsolete. If we make food abundant, then there's no need to fight over food. If we're able to purify water so that water is abundant, then there's no need to fight over or own water supplies. I think that when it comes right down to it, we are fighting each other because we're living in an illusory paradigm. We are living in a false worldview. And that false worldview is essentially the illusion of separation and the illusion of scarcity. There is an abundance of everything all around us. But what has been created is that this illusion of separation, and we must take this from that person because there is this illusion of scarcity that there's not enough to go around. So once again, the domain is of the mind and the heart. Once that illusion is dissolved and the truth of abundance, the truth of unity end up becoming integrated into the collective psyche, then our entire social, economic, and geopolitical systems will shift and change.
I have noticed that people that, especially with online gaming, like I would find myself gaming with like Chinese people, and like nobody wants to fight, but we do want to compete. The joy of competition is, I mean, that's why we have sports, is because like it's like a primal thing. Like I ran faster than you, haha, but I'm not like trying to hurt the other athlete. I mean, I guess there's boxing where the point is like you want to knock them unconscious, which is interesting concept. But like with resources,
but the thing is, with boxing, you want to do so as quickly as possible. You're not trying to inflict damage. You're trying to win the fight.
yeah, you don't want to keep hurting them when they're on the ground. You want to just knock them down and then be like, I'm still standing up. Yeah, it's not really even about, I mean, it is, I guess, hurting, but not about damaging. You're not really trying to, I mean, some fighters might be like, but I don't think the idea is to like permanently destroy the other human being. No, it never is. No. In fact, that's antithetical to sports.
Well, and it's about disabling in boxing or MMA. It's about disabling the opponent. In martial arts in general, in self-defense, it is about disabling your attacker. It's not about, that's why it's self-defense. It is a martial art because there is an art to defending yourself. If you are being attacked, then your opponent, your attacker, actually leaves several portions on their body vulnerable in the process of attacking. And then so the martial art of self-defense is about exploiting those vulnerabilities. And if we graft that notion of self-defense and martial arts onto the global paradigm that we're in, we as a species are being attacked. And those less than 1%ers that are doing the attacking are actually leaving several spots within their apparatus vulnerable to a countermeasure. And we, I think, as people and as a species, must learn the spiritual art of judo and political judo, and using this momentum of our attacker to throw them off balance and disable them.
Yeah, I love when fighters hug after a match, because it is like a bonding experience and you're really in it together to perform and and like you said, stop the threat. It's not about harming like that's what they teach in self-defense for sure. It's about stopping the threat, which means you could just get away from it. That's stopping. The threat is no longer there. It's stopped. Or you can actually disable the threatening individual or whatever by like putting them on the ground or whatever. I like that. I like that methodology a lot. I'm still concerned about resources. Like you're talking about this like illusion of resources, because not everyone has access to clean water and food. Technically, we could build technologies that can molecularly print water and oil and food from like the atomic scale. It's going to require like a leap of electricity generation, I think, and also maybe a leap of trust, which is a weird thing to say. But the more brute method would be like just to make new rivers, to carve new rivers, and desalination, like naturalized desalination from ocean waters. Well, or creating more. I mean, they are trying to create rain clouds. And some people will talk a lot about, well, they're spraying silver iodide into the air and they're going to destroy the earth. But I'm actually very into the idea of creating clouds and like coalescing moisture in the air to make it rain over areas where it's dry, because without water, I feel like there will always be conflict. And so, and humans do grow rapidly too. So that's another issue, is like unchecked, the human's population can grow itself into extinction. Like the deer will eat so much of the foliage and give so much birth that they don't have any more food to eat. And then they starve out. That's something my dad used to talk about as a hunter. He'd be like, so we have to go out there and clear a bunch of white-tailed deer. Otherwise they'll overeat and destroy their own food supply.
One thing I want you to try to consider is that, first of all, there's a guy that invented a machine that actually sucks moisture out of the air and converts it into clean drinking water. So that is a possibility right now. Also, the Tesla towers have the ability to control and manipulate the weather. So we don't need to carve new rivers. What we need to do is take our rightful place in the ecosystem as gardeners and veterinarians. And by understanding the laws of physics and how it is that energy, frequency, and vibration work, then we can take our natural place in the ecosystem and also, in one way or another, like actually engineer storms without the need for stratospheric aerosol injections or cloud seeding, because it's based on the elements themselves and vortexes and stuff like that in ecosystems that water and rain and things like that get to the environment. So what we need to do is understand that nature is doing things perfectly to sustain life. And we need to get in that niche. That's why I'm saying we need to take our rightful place in the ecosystem, which is a fully conscious being that understands the intricate and interconnected nature of reality and where we fit in it. Then we can turn, Earth into an Eden all over again.
I was fascinated with the Native American rain dance, that they would actually do that. And apparently they did it and it was real. And like it would, I don't know if it always, but I had experiences. I don't know if you've ever done this with moving clouds, with focusing positive energy into the sky and seeing the clouds dissipate. They would just go, and like the opposite of the negative energy, which is just, even like happiness is a negative energy. I feel like emotions are negative energy, whether they're good or bad. It's electrons, because I would feel like if I look up at the sky with any kind of emotion, it would cause the clouds to coalesce and cause it to come together to form more thick cloud. And I've done it multiple times. We had this experience in San Diego where my friend and I were walking on the beach, and we went to lay down, and there's this huge black storm cloud coming in, just about to, on the radar. You could see it going to just smear San Diego with rain. And I was like, you can move the clouds. And we meditated on the beach and we're focusing at it. And the clouds overhead, the split over us. And on the radar, you can see the clouds split north and south of us. And we got like light cloud cover came over. It's anecdotal, but it was real. I've done it multiple times with clouds. And if that's just my body's magnetic field or something that like that, it's an if, because it's a strange anecdote to say out loud in 21st century, 2023. But I would imagine that you could build machines that would do that too.
Yes, well, and that's what the Tesla towers do, is they tap into the Earth's natural electromagnetic field and then control or manipulate the ions in the area. Now, one thing that you're talking about is something that shamans have done for thousands of years. Yes, the rain dance. Yes, the manipulation of the weather through their interconnected electromagnetic field to the Earth. The human body emits scalar waves and all sorts of electromagnetic frequencies. So if everything is interconnected through these fractalized electromagnetic fields of varying size and scale, and if everything is in fact quantum entangled, which it is, then of course our thoughts and our emotions are going to have an effect on all of that system, because our thoughts and our emotions are electromagnetic frequencies as well. So when the shaman is, say, standing in a sacred site, banging the drum, singing the rain song. They're not just banging a drum and singing the rain song in a sacred site. They are banging their drums, singing their rain song, which is a frequency that they are emitting, because they're also thinking and feeling the prayer of what rain would feel like, what it would be like to smell the rain, to feel the rain, to walk in the mud. They're also creating that feeling in a strategic location where they influence the quantum entangled vortex of the ecosystem. And so their vortex, their electromagnetic field, is influencing the quantum entangled vortex directly within the ecosystem. And then that is permeating that signal. And then it is affecting the quantum entangled realm and bringing the elements to respond to that signal. And we can do that through technology of like a tower, or the technology of the mind and the body. This is the most advanced piece of technology in the universe.
The human body. It's fascinating. Animals in general are absolutely incredible. Like, what a wild piece of tech. And like, if you've ever, in the past, I've been taking psilocybin, and the thing I've noticed the most while using psilocybin is life, and how life stands out from non-life. Like the non-life, you see it as like structure that's been there, put there, like walls and things. You're like, someone built this here for me before I got here. This is all like a set. And then you see the living creatures and how they're like moving like water and like flowing through this structured reality. Life is, it's so fascinating. And I think that the human brain tends to become desensitized to concepts in general, just so it can get by during the day. So when I look around, normally it didn't really stand out to me, but that was something I noticed wildly. And also, like you were saying, singing and banging the drum to bring the rain, to tap into whatever it is. I'm trying to bring up the human dynamo, which is this electromagnetic field. I mean, if anything, here's an image of it. And I wish I had a little bit of data to pull something up, but you know, you've got iron in your body. The iron is causing a magnetic field. You've got iron in the heart flowing through you, especially coming out of the heart. But this here shows multiple dynamos, which makes a lot of sense. You know, we're within fields, the Earth's magnetic field. And probably these machines are causing a lot of interference too. Like running electrical current through wires has probably caused this new distortive evolution. But in addition to banging the drum and singing the song, is moving, is dancing, flowing. It causes the field to warp and bend. I had another experience on the rooftop in Brooklyn where I was dancing around, spinning these rubber pieces of rubber, just like doing Tai Chi on the roof. And it was pure clouds. And then I was dancing and moving for 15, 20 minutes. And I looked up, and the clouds above me had begun to spin around in a circle and opened up a hole to the sky. I could see the moon through it, and they were just circling above me. It's like, what in that was the first time I ever felt like I was part of it. That was a while. That was like 2012 or something. I'm
now,
endless.
What's interesting about that, Ian, is that the system of full spectrum dominance that we are talking about earlier is a system that has infiltrated the mind and therefore created a social egoic construct of who and what you are that buries this truth of your real influence on the world and reality. It has basically said, if you don't fit into this system, if you are not propped up as one of these people on the television or on the internet or whatever, then you don't matter. You don't affect the world, etc. So they have essentially robbed us of our power through creating this illusion of separation from not just each other, but from the world as a whole.
I got really sad. One time I told a really good friend of mine that she was a nobody because she didn't have a social media presence. That was like full co-opt, just a demonic thing to say to someone, because she was influencing reality more than I can perceive, even though she was just sitting still. So do you meditate?
Yeah.
What are your meditations like?
Well, I mean, if you want, you can listen to them every Saturday at noon here in Arizona. That'll be 2 p.m. your time. I go down to the Arizona State Capitol because it's built on electromagnetic ley lines. And we do a guided meditation and prayer every Saturday. And there's a bunch of them that are on my X profile, on my page. And it's about connecting to nature and each other, and understanding the way that physics ties into metaphysics, and how the two are actually one and the same. It's like metaphysics are the schematics for the physical world. And when you understand that you are not the wave, you are the current, you are not your body, you are the infinitely nested electromagnetic fields, the consciousness field, the energy field, the unified field, then you can really begin to make some headway into influencing reality consciously.
But yeah, I do meditations where I was practicing. What I did was in 2006, I started making YouTube videos, and I was like, what would Jesus do if he had this technology? He'd probably spread the gospel with internet video. So I started making videos like the Four Agreements. It's this book of Toltec wisdom written by
I
the
know the Four
ancient Aztec.
Agreements.
Yeah, the Toltecs were like pre-Aztec wisdom guides. And I was like, wow, these agreements are amazing. Always do your best. Don't take anything personally. Always say, be impeccable with your word. And, what's the fourth agreement? Always do your best. Don't take anything. Don't make assumptions. Don't make assumptions. That was a big one. Don't make assumptions. I like don't take anything personally, especially with internet comments. That's helped me a lot. And so I tried to spread the agreements, and what I ended up doing was kind of doing confession. Like I would talk about my past and like reveal these hideous secrets that I had, and like these embarrassing things that happened to me in my life. And as I did that, they stopped popping into my brain and disrupting, and then I gained control of my thoughts, and I was able to, instead of say a sentence to someone, I could think the sentence to them. And I started experimenting with, well, what if I think words, healthy, you're healthy, and then do that 5 times in a row? Or what if I think it twice and then say it the third time and then think it 2 more times? Like the numerology involved, how does that influence the vibration? And then I was like, well, now I've come to think like a thought is like dropping a pebble in a pond and the ripple. So if you drop too many thoughts at once, it's going to cause distortion and interference in the ripples. But if you just drop one thought healthy and then have no thought, it allows the ripples to expand outward, probably alpha waves traveling through the earth and the galaxy. And so I've become really reliant on no thought meditation, where I'll go unendingly with no thought. It's allowed me to start to listen. A big part of I guess listening is a type of meditation.
Yeah. And that's great. It's hard to do guided meditation without talking, but when it comes to me as an individual, I know exactly what you're talking about, where you're going with that. Part of shamanism is learning to observe the world beyond the use of words, beyond syntax, which is actually part of why it is that things like psilocybin mushrooms or peyote or ayahuasca or even cannabis, ibogaine, why they're so important, because they actually dissolve syntax and they force the mind and the brain to absorb reality beyond the use of words.
When you were in jail for after the 6th, and it was like, I asked you about it before, I was like, was it like it was in solitary confinement for some time? I think you'd mentioned. I was like, what was that?
10.5 months.
10 and a half. Like, was it every day for 10 and a half months straight? Were you meditating?
Pretty much. I mean, there was a couple of times in there where like they transferred me from one institution to another. But when I was behind bars that's why I say 10.5 months, because it was about a year until I actually was moved to a federal prison. So there was a small period of time in there, about, a month and a half, that I wasn't actually in solitary, but total time in solitary confinement was 10.5 months.
And then when you weren't in it, were you in like a general area with like a cell with other people in cells and waiting or something?
Well, kind of. Like I was in a pod of people of 6 cells. So there was only 6 other people in that pod, and they too were in solitary and only got 2 hours out of their cell. And there was a scheduling rotation of when you could come out of your cell and when you couldn't. So and some of the people that were in that pod, man, there's dudes that were, it's 3 a.m. and they're up like singing at the top of their lungs. There's people that were listening to that were on like a very specific schedule because of how dangerous they were, that they were only able to get out of their cell at like 2 a.m. And from 2 to 4, the TV would be as loud as it possibly could be. There's people that were just pounding on their doors, because they weren't getting the attention that they wanted from the staff or the CO. So it'd be like 12 o'clock at night and they're kicking the ever-loving hell out of their door and waking everybody up. They don't care. There were some crazy people in that pod.
Was it better than being alone?
Well, I mean, I guess, but in a way I was alone because I didn't really interact with them. And even when they did like want to come up and talk to me, because some of them, they knew who I wasn't, jail and prison is not the place to make friends. It's not the place to make enemies either. But I was not interested in socializing because I had nothing in common with most of these people.
The reason I brought it up is I was wondering if you meditated while did you go into deep meditation for hours?
Absolutely. But the thing is, and this is, I'm sure you can understand, imagine you're meditating and you kind of, leave the body and go into the ether and you experience the totality and the beauty of all existence. And you're like in this blissful state. And then it hits you. When you come back to your body, you're going to be stuck in a cell and you got all this pressure, the government, the media lying about you, the government demonizing you, your own attorney not representing you properly. Who's the amount of pressure that was on my mind and was weighing on my heart was very profound. So what's interesting about it though, is that I was able to maintain a certain level of internal peace through all of that. A certain level of the objective observer remained inside of me. So that it made that part of me so much stronger. And instead of breaking me, it turned me into a diamond.
Yeah. Now you're running for Congress. Tell me about it. What happened when first you got out of prison? Did you get out early because of videos that were released? I remember seeing they're like new video has come out and you were like walking. So what, you just served the time and then released?
Well, kind of. Yeah. I got 12 months off of my sentence. So I was sentenced to 41 months in prison, in federal prison. You serve 85% of your time, assuming that you don't get in any trouble. You get out 85 after 85% of your time is completed. So I had 6 months worth of good time because I only am going to serve 85% of 41 months. So that's 6 months that was going to be taken off my sentence. 15% of 41 months is 6 months. Then I accumulated FSA or First Step Act credits, which was passed by Donald Trump in 2018, I believe, by the way, it had been sitting in the Congress for over 40 years. So when all these Democrats are telling everybody we got prison reform, they had a bill they could have passed a long, long time ago that they just never did. And that's a lot of these bills in Congress. They'll, give money to Ukraine, but they won't, legalize cannabis. But in short, I got 12 months off of my sentence. And then so I knew I was going to get released on the 28th of March to a halfway house in mid-February. But then 3 weeks before my release, Tucker Carlson releases that footage and just completely shatters the narrative and the paradigm of the Mockingbird media and the government. And then 3 weeks after that, I get released. And a lot of people are thinking, Tucker Carlson's footage got him released. Whoa, And even people like Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene were saying that was the case. And it's like, dude, you're a congressman. You should know that the only way that footage would get me released is if I went to court and the judge said, release him, and banged the gavel. And that did not happen. What it was that they were using that as an opportunity to reinforce the talking points and give the conservative Republicans a win. So no, it had nothing to do with it. It was a divine synchronicity, it was divine providence. And I can't help but think when it happened, I couldn't help but think of the biblical verse that I stumbled upon through divine intervention when I was in solitary for the first week or so. of my sentence, or first week or after being arrested, and they slapped me with the felonies. And then they were saying 25-year maximum sentence, and I was freaking out. So I went back to my cell, and I had a Bible, and I said, God, I need you to talk with me. You asked me to go through this. You asked me to do this. I need you to talk with me right now because, they're talking 25-year maximum sentence. So I have this Bible. I'm going to close my eyes. I'm going to open this Bible, and I'm going to point to a random verse with my eyes closed, and I need you to speak with me like now. So I close my eyes, open the Bible, point to a random verse with my eyes closed. I look at the Bible verse I have my finger at, and it says, I am yours and you are mine. I am yours and you are mine. I have redeemed you and called you by name, O Jacob. And I was like, whoa. And that was the first thing that really came into my mind when Tucker Carlson aired that footage was, I have redeemed you and called you by name, O Jacob.
That's resounding. I only want to speak because we're on video, and silence would be maybe kind of boring, but that's the kind of thing I could sit in silence and resonate with for, wow, that's interesting. I do believe there is a God. Did you believe in God before the prison sentence? Did it strengthen or harden your faith in God, or were you always into
Absolutely. It? Yeah. I've always believed in God, and I've always tried to get close to God, even ever since I was like a small child. I didn't want to do it the conventional way, like through the Catholic Church or something, because I believe that the dogma is just garbage, to be perfectly honest with you. But I knew that people like Yeshua or Jesus knew something, that people like Buddha knew something. I knew that the shamans knew something. And I wanted to know what that was. I wanted to achieve enlightenment. I wanted to ascend ever since I was a kid. And my relationship with God, my looking up to people like Yeshua or Christ and Buddha has been pervasive throughout my life and has led me to this place where, yes, my time in prison strengthened my faith. I did the miraculous things. Like I just gave you one example just now. The miraculous things that I experienced while I was in prison and in solitary confinement are very profound.
What? Tell me about it.
Well, here's an example. So there was several times where I had not heard from my lawyer in like over a week. And I was like, what is going on? Why am I not talking to my lawyer? He was telling me every time I got on the phone with him that it was very difficult for him to get a hold of me. So I would have several occasions where I hadn't spoken with him for some time. And I would just pray and pray. The Our Father and the Hail Mary in particular, I would just pray over and over and over again. And for like 45 minutes to an hour. And in the midst of this prayer, my cell door would open and they'd say, hey, your lawyer's on the phone. And another example. So, I'm in my cell in solitary and I'm like, God, the government is demonizing me. The media is lying about me. People are believing these lies. Please help me. Help me. Like, why would you ask me to go through this? Why would you ask me to do this? Why am I being so demonized? I tried to help the cops. I stopped people from breaking in. I stopped somebody from stealing. Why is all this weight being thrust on me? Why am I being so demonized? Why would you allow this to happen? Please send me a sign. I need a sign to know that you're here, that you hear my prayers, that you're with me. Please, help. And then I would get like a stack of letters that night. And those letters would have biblical verses that were like answers to my prayers. People would be saying, nobody believes what is in the media. Don't let it get you down. We know now that they're, full of crap. They're fake news. The narrative is shifting. People like Elon Musk saying free Jacob-Chansley, things like that. And what's interesting about it is that these biblical verses, these people telling me their commentary, the narrative shifting, all of it was in sync with my prayers and answers to my prayers, like to the T. And what's even more interesting is that the letters that I was receiving were a week old, because the jail would hold on to them and like sift through all of them and open the letters to make sure there's no contraband and stuff like that. Probably also faxing or emailing them over to the feds. And the letters were a week old. So that means that God had somebody write a letter a week prior to answer my prayers a week later.
Yeah, I think that we're in a magnetic universe or an electric field, some sort of system where time is working in both directions, where what we think we create is actually we're part of it. Like anyway, like when you go to call your friend and they're calling you at the same moment, and you could get a busy signal. Back in the day, it would go right to voicemail for both people, and you're like, what? And then you hang up the phone, and then it rings, and your buddy's like, oh, sorry, I was just calling you. And I wonder about that, like when I pray and then there's a response. If I prayed because that response was coming, or if my prayer caused the response, or if it's both. And I imagine it's more that it's both, that it's an emergent system that you're part of. And like, I found that when Hamas attacked southern Israel and the Israeli response, I started praying heavily. I wasn't praying a lot before that, a little bit, like, please give me her pain. Let me suffer her pain. Let me take it on myself. But like, when that happens, I got really spiritual for a period, like a lot of prayer. And I want to not only get into prayer during times of pain. I don't want it to be like only resort to that kind of thing when things are bad. It should be, I would hope that I could do it and remind myself to do it when things are good too. Maybe it's that people don't want to disturb the goodness, so they don't want to, but like, I think gratitude, people keep reminding me gratitude, be thankful for things when they're good. Pray, thanks. Like, what are your prayers like now?
Gratitude, a lot of gratitude. I mean, there was even gratitude while I was in prison to a certain extent, especially when things like, the letters would come in, or I'd get a chance to talk with my mom or my family on the phone or something. Or, after I prayed and got a chance to talk to my lawyer. Now it's also gratitude that people are waking up. Prayer is different. Like, there's all different kinds of prayer. There's song and dance, like what we were talking about before. That's a form of prayer and worship. Then there's things like quiet solitude and meditation in nature. That's a form of prayer and a form of worship. I would say that prayer is consciously creating reality. And what you're saying about time flowing in both directions, from past to future and future to past, is actually very accurate. If you look into like quantum physics and tachyons and the different quantum particles that actually travel so fast through space and time that they travel backward through what we would perceive as time from future to past, then it actually kind of begins to make sense how it is that we're able to even like decide, well, I'm thirsty, I'm going to go get a drink of water. And so you envision yourself getting up, walking over and getting a drink of water. And the only way that that is even possible is if that data is already present in the unified field, and the power of manifestation is seeing the fifth dimensional possibility of where it is that you want to go, moving your three-dimensional body through the fourth dimension of time to that fifth dimensional possibility that becomes a 3D reality, all through your hyperdimensional consciousness having access to a larger information field that goes beyond the five senses.
Yeah, there was a study I saw a decade ago about light traveling faster than objects that are. So like when someone throws a baseball at you, you're actually seeing the light reflect off the baseball before the baseball gets to you, and your brain calculates where it's going to be, like, and they gave a number, and maybe it was 0.006 seconds. So you're actually, that's why people can get to where the ball's about to be, because you see, you can anticipate where things are about to be. And I think when it comes to emotions, that's why when you interface with someone, if you think they're going to be angry and you go into the conversation with that, then they become angry, sort of thing, is sort of this, like, it's like almost like a magnetic teleportation, or like a collapse that's happening. That's a little different than time moving in both directions. But the other metaphor I was thinking is that when you look at a light wave, just a wave, you look at it and it's just there and you see the wave there. But in reality, it's going back and forth super fast, which kind of indicates it's a similar, I think that's a metaphor to time. Although you see it happening, it's like it's happening backward and forward really quickly at once. That's also sort of esoteric. But I wanted to go talk about how you said you were refined into diamond strength in prison while you were there, and then when you came out, you were stronger, sharper. And then when did you decide to run? At what point did you decide to run for Congress?
Oh, like about a month and a couple of days ago.
What was your life from like day one coming out of jail?
Much better. It's incredible the things we take for granted. Being able to play with my dog, to see my family, to cook my own food, to look at the stars at night. I was in solitary for 10 and a half months. I didn't see the stars for months. Going on a walk in nature, going to the store and buying something, driving, the getting on the internet, like all of these things most people take for granted. Now it's like these are special treats.
When people talk about freedom, I think a lot of people, when they think about freedom, it's like the freedom to do and say whatever they want. But I think often about freedom literally being able to move around, like get up and like go outside. That's freedom.
Yeah, imagine being locked in a cell and not having any power over the key.
Well, yeah, when it comes to protest, I've thought about this for 12 or so years. I find now that like getting out on the street and like yelling and doing stuff is not the best form of, I mean, it's the oldest form of protest probably, but now the internet video is like, if something is happening that you don't like, of course you can say, I don't like that. But rather than be like, I hate it, I hate it, I hate it, I hate it, rather than scream and bang your head against the hate, acknowledge the problem and then immediately start to show people the solution. And that's the protest. It's actually
Yes.
It's a forward testament.
Yes, very, very true. And I've been saying that in spaces for a while, that we don't want to protest. We want to invest in each. And that's why I go down to the Capitol every Saturday here in Arizona, because we are investing in the future. We're investing in each other. We're investing in America. We're investing in our children. We're investing in the planet. We're investing in God. And we are pro something. We are pro peace, pro love, pro unity consciousness, pro American. We're not anti this. I think it was Ram Dass that once said that the guy that's marching down the street screaming for peace is in effect creating war, because he's creating the opposition to that for which he is standing. And in a sense, he's polarizing the world, because he doesn't understand that inner and outer space are exactly the same.
There's theory that we're in a black hole, literally, and that the universe is coming into the reason it's so, well, I don't know if it's the reason why it's so dark out there, but part of it is, and that when I think of that theory, that we're inside of a black hole, that the inner space, literally what is you are creating within you, is going to come into our reality from without. And that may be literal. Like,
have you seen the documentary Black Hole, WHOLE, Black Hole, by Nassim Haramein?
Actually, yeah, dude. The Schwarzschild proton. Is that where he's talking about? How
I think so, yeah. And how basically you can have within a finite sacred geometric design an infinite amount of fractalization. So you can actually contain the entirety of a multiverse and create an infinite amount of universes within a finite space.
Yeah, the universe is of equal density, according to his Nassim Haramein Schwarzschild proton paper, that every proton is two protons revolving around each other at the speed of light. That's one part of the paper, depositing information into the vacuum of space-time and then repositing all of the calculation of space-time's localized response to you. So like you impact the vacuum locally, the entire reality, all of it takes that into calculation and then gives you a local change. So to you, it doesn't locality doesn't seem to change that much, but it is, and the entire web of space-time is changing. He also calculates that everything is of equal density, that at the center of every proton is a black hole, and that because it's small, I got to get Nassim on the show. I want to go deep with Nassim on the Schwarzschild proton. It seems to be a unifying field theory. It seems that he's unified Einstein's field equation with this Schwarzschild proton paper.
Yeah, well, he's a savant of physics. So I mean, he's like the Rain Man of physics, you know.
The scientific community wouldn't accept him in the early days. He said he just lived in his van and would just write his calculations in a van. Like, the guy's so legit. He's like the Tesla of our time in a lot of ways. There's a few of them. I think he's one of them. He might be the Einstein of our day, but it's just for whatever reason. And what I want the scientific community to understand is just because there's a new model doesn't mean the old model's wrong. It's just a new way of looking at the same thing. Both models are correct. Like, you can look at God as three parts, like the creator, the destroyer, and the protector, like Hinduism, or you can look at it as a one thing, or that you can see it two parts of the one, which is like the yin yang. Like, it's all looking at the same object from different perspectives.
Well, yeah, it's like that picture where a cylinder is hanging from a ceiling and somebody's shining a flashlight from one angle and the shadow is a rectangle. Somebody shines a flashlight from the other angle and the shadow is a circle, but it's both and neither. It's actually a cylinder, and the truth has multiple dimensions.
Yep. Hey, what's your we've been going for over an hour, man. This is great. What is your congressional platform?
Number one is single bill voting law. That's the first thing, and it's very important. So from there, then after that is a term limit for Congress, an amendment for term limit for congressmen and staff. Number three is going to be criminalization of lobbying. And number four is going to be a bill of 7-figure fines, expulsion, and prosecution for Congress members caught doing insider trading. And so that's the four main things that I'm promising the people of the 8th Congressional District in Arizona and the American people that I'm going to bring to the House floor upon my arrival in D.C. But the thing is that is just the tip of the iceberg. That's just the beginning of the strategy of uprooting corruption, which is my campaign slogan, uprooting corruption. Because once you've established those things, then all this other stuff comes afterward. And the establishment of these things in this order is also very important as well. Because think about it, single bill voting law. Then what you're going to be able to do is, first of all, you're going to be able to ensure that these omnibus bills of 2,000 pages, like the NDAA thing that just got passed, where they secured funding for Ukraine and allowed the FBI to spy on everybody and extended FISA and all that stuff, that's all out the window. So now we have a single bill voting law that makes sure that instead of 2,000 pages being read in 24 to 48 hours, you get 20 to 50 pages of law that you're able to read in 24 to 48 hours. Also, based on the single bill voting law, everything that comes after that, all of the special interest spending, all of the foreign proxy war spending, all of the NGO contracts and stuff like that, those are all going to be narrowed down to one bill. So that means that you're going to get to see the NGO or the special interest group or the corporate sponsor on these congressmen's lapels the way that NASCAR drivers wear their corporate sponsors on their suit. You see? So you're going to see, based on the way these people are voting, whose pocket that they're in. Now, another example of how this single bill voting law will be essential is that when you start to introduce things like term limits for congressmen and staff and that amendment, there's going to be people that have been in Congress for a very long time and have been corrupting the Congress for decades that were going to vote no on that. So then you get to see, oh, these are the people that are career politicians that want to keep their job and have been a part of stifling change. Also, like I said, if you corrupt a single congressman, and that congressman stays in power for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, then you've just corrupted an apparatus within the government for decades. So term limits ensures that is much more difficult to do. Next, the criminalization of lobbying. A lot of these congressmen make their they make their campaigns based on lobbyists. Lobbyists and these government contracts too are because of lobbying. So they lobby the congressmen. They get them on the committees, which it takes actual money to get on the committees. I don't know if you know that. So the congressmen are getting money from the special interest groups to get on the committees that these special interest groups or these NGOs or these lobbyists are actually lobbying these committees for these government contracts. You see? And so once you get rid of lobbying, and there's other apparatuses involved as well, but once you get rid of lobbying, then you also limit corruption as well. And then finally, because they're not going to be getting in their campaign money, or they're not going to be getting, speaking engagements or whatever from these corporations because of the criminalization of lobbying, then you move into the insider trading. Because if they're not able to make their money through corruption, through lobbying, they're going to try to do it through insider trading. And if you make that illegal, then, well, good luck corrupting our Congress. And another thing it's important about that is this, is that the government contracts that are given to these committees or to these congressmen, or these bills, these omnibus bills that are being pushed through, this massive amount of spending and stuff like that, the congressmen that are voting on this stuff, a lot of the time they'll have their family members or whatever buy stock, or they themselves will buy stock, which means that they end up having a vested interest in keeping the corporatocracy and the government working together, because then they will profit from it. And the 7-figure fines, expulsion, and prosecution for Congress members caught insider trading, it will create an atmosphere where there's a lot more reticence about being corrupt, as opposed to it being the status quo. And they won't have a way to make large sums of money off of our tax dollars anymore.
Yeah, I like the idea of serving, not for money, not to make money, but just to send service to the people, to be there for them. Sometimes it requires that you have wealth. That, I think, part of that was challenging, because if you didn't have any money and you want to go to Congress and not make any money, then how can you come back from Congress and be further ahead in life? So people are like, well, I got to make a little something. But I mean, they get paid $100,000 a year or something like that too.
Yeah, $170,000 a year is very, very good as far as. And the other thing that I also want to do, and this is the kind of stuff that's going to come afterward, is like Congress, these people have their own, benefits. They aren't stuck on things like the government, Obamacare crap. The kind of system that they're using, the retirement plans that they've got, the way that after they, serve in Congress, they get, a certain pension. I mean, they give themselves pay raises all the time. In my experience of working at a job, if my approval rating from my, boss is like below 30%, which is pretty much where it's at this point with the Congress, then I don't get a raise. I get fired.
That'd be a funny skit.
You know what I'm saying?
Where like the workers vote to give themselves a raise. They're like, this is the worst company of all time. They're like, yeah, that'd be a good skit. I'm going to figure that out.
That's a good idea.
I want to pull some super chats before we wrap, because people were
Sure.
commenting and they were really happy. Well, Philip came in early with this. He was ready to rock. Philip Fisher, let's go. And we did, Philip. What's this one? I'm not your buddy guy asked, do you think your shamanic ritual helped in DC?
Absolutely.
Yeah, as bad as things did go in a lot of ways, it could have been worse. Maybe, it really, that's a one way to look at it, is that we preserved it wasn't, there were no like it was, that's a good perspective. Like,
well, and think about this really quick. Think about January 6th and the narrative. If they hadn't made me the poster boy, and if Tucker Carlson hadn't released the footage, if you weren't talking to me now, realizing that the Mockingbird media's narrative was complete horse crap. You see what I'm saying? The inspiration that it caused other people in other countries. There's somebody in Ireland, somebody in Russia, somebody in Brazil, somebody in Italy, many other countries that have donned their own regalia, shamanic regalia, and painted their face with their country's flag colors. So there is a sort of a movement of screw the NWO, screw this tyrannical dictatorship, and we're going to stand up and say, hell no.
Yeah, I'm more of like, I want to augment the NWO. I want to use the electromagnetic jujitsu to alter it into a really viable, decentralized, like libertarian, or like just like a democratic republic, a decentralized democratic republic, like a United States of Earth. That could be our new world order. It could be literally like United States all across the planet. It would just require people in their countries to want to do it and to be willing to change and create free speech and Bill of Rights for themselves. I love it. And in that vein, I'd love to like talk with Klaus Schwab about it. I think that people have become maybe like they've not nihilistic or given up, but that it's like it feels overwhelming to think that you could create a system like that, or that it's a foreign concept. But I believe it's possible. The United States is such an amazing experiment, and there's so much peace and love amongst the states. Like I've traveled through 12 states, and like we're all not the same. We're not the same. That's hyperbolic, but like, yo, we're ready to be together. Like we're ready to rock. People are just cool in this country. We're so unified for having 50 different concepts with these states. I love it. This is the next one from Romeo Flowers. Jesus is king. Love you both. Thanks for not being evil. Heart. Well, thank you, Romeo. You know, you have one life, so you may as well make it as good as possible. Of course, good can be considered subjective too. And you've got to always be keeping yourself in check with what you think is righteous and good, because people, you know, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, I've heard. What do we got? Another one from Lone Boy 63, or I'm sorry, Lane Boy 63. I direct message you on X about someone you might want to interview. Thanks for the heads up, brother. Who else we got here? The B said, Ian, you're the GOAT for this one, brother. I enjoyed seeing your growth. And Jacob, you're an American hero. Keep fighting the good fight. Thanks, Truth B. Oh, the B, Truth B. That's funny. The B again. Also, I wish you great luck on the great untangling, Jake. Thank you very much, Jacob Chansley. Really good to see you again, man.
Good to see you too, man. This has been a fantastic conversation. And go ahead.
It feels so good to talk about electromagnetic fields.
Right. And quantum entanglement and, you know, all that stuff. Hell yeah.
Dude, I love you, man. All right. Well, let's do this again sometime, dude.
Reach out anytime. You will have, I will make my time in my schedule for you. I assure you of that.
Gorgeous. Everyone listening, like the video, share with your friends, subscribe to the channel. Have a great day, a beautiful, blessed love. Send your love to your family and friends now. And I'll see everybody later.